Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimist, where we talk about all things film with a healthy dose of optimism. I'm your co-host, Seth Boyd.
I am Megan Tierney.
And folks, we're going to continuing our theme months here. It is November, and it is the month of Thanksgiving here in the States. And so we're going to do two kind of loosely related to Thanksgiving movies. And the first choice we have here, because in my mind, Thanksgiving really comes down to family and food. The first movie is going to be The Family. And this is not going to be a pleasant family movie, so because that just wouldn't be on brand for us. This is Autumn Sonata by Ingmar Bergman. And Ingmar Bergman's one of the most prolific and influential filmmakers ever. He's really kind of the poster boy of film. If you just watch a few of his movies, you'll see how often he's parodied. Often when you want to say like an art house movie, like the famous image of a man playing chess against death, that's in The Seventh Seal. That's one of his movies. So he's often referenced as just, he's emulated as like the art house guy. And he's great. And he had a career for very long. He started making movies in the 40s and continued until 2003, actually, was when his last movie came out. So a lifelong filmmaker.
Nice.
One of the most influential guys. And Megan, one of the reasons I chose this movie was I was pretty sure you hadn't seen a Bergman movie before. And this is actually the first Bergman movie I watched as well in film class.
Nice.
Our previous guest, Taos Glut's film class. So, and it was very surprising to me that this was the pick because I seen those images from Seventh Seal, which is kind of a medieval mystery, strange thing. And I was expecting something that sounded on paper more grandiose than a family reunion that doesn't go great, so
that's right.
And that I had never heard this movie before. I was of course familiar with Ingrid Bergman, the actress who's in this film. We'll just clear this up, they're not related, they're both Swedish, they're both the same last name. This is not a nepotism thing.
Okay, so I'm glad you cleared that up, Seth. I was extremely confused by that. I was like, it's a woman director. And folks, again, in true Megan fashion, in true Film Optimist fashion, I knew nothing going into this film, knew nothing about the director. And not even like, I think because of its like foreignness, even like influences I didn't know. So that's really cool. I'm glad you mentioned that. I did not know that.
You've seen Casablanca or movies like that?
I've basically seen Casablanca.
Okay, that's fair. Everyone has basically seen it, but Ingrid Bergman's the lead in that movie. So she is a Swedish actor who worked a lot in Sweden and Italy, was a Hollywood star for quite a while. Like a very prolific actress. And actually this is her last movie, and this was kind of her last thing she wanted to do, was do a movie with Ingmar Bergman so
what an appropriate title for her, Autumn Sonata. I love that.
Yes, exactly. So it's a real swan song. And this is actually, well, I said Bergman, the director Ingmar, worked in film for quite a while. That's not entirely true. This is actually the last film he made as a film. After this, he made a lot of television films. And which is very odd, we think of TV, especially in the 70s, as not being recognized as the same level of artistic merit as film. But for complicated reasons we don't need to get into this episode, Bergman worked in TV the rest of his life and made still great movies that were still nominated for awards, but were technically television productions, not film productions. So it's a very interesting time in foreign film. But Megan, before we dive in, I don't think I prepared you enough other than telling you this is a fucked up family movie. Did you have an expectation, or did you have nothing? What did you think of this movie?
I had nothing, and then suddenly I had everything, having watched this movie. Well, you know what? It was funny. So, I mean, we should like specify. I think that's very specifically a like mother-daughter relationship film, which I got early on, obviously, and I think that's actually a hot ticket item right now in pop culture almost.
Oh, that's really
true. It made me think of Jeanette McCurdy's, which I have not read yet, but she's talked about her abusive relationship with her mother. And
like that. I'm Glad My Mom Died book.
I'm Glad My Mom Died book, and I know. So I haven't read it yet. I think I'm not emotionally ready for it, or just not wanting that right now. But it looks very, very good, and it just made me think of it because I've seen a couple interviews of it because I'm like fascinated by it, and I liked a lot what she had said about it is the kind of demystifying that we have to do as a society of the image of the mother especially for like daughters and stuff. And she said that like, I think that that title was so controversial for her because we kind of have this, we tend to put mom on a pedestal as a society. And what do you do when that relationship is a little effed up, if you will? So
yeah.
so this movie that I thought tracked perfectly in line with that, with quite a complicated mother-daughter relationship, but it was fun to watch.
What a great connection, Megan. I can't believe I didn't think of that while we're watching this. This is one of Anne's favorite movies, who has a great relationship with her mother. I do not, but with mine, I mean. So it's like this is movies makes sense for a movie for me to like, but much like with our Hereditary episode, look at the warning, you don't have to have a fucked up family relationship to like this movie. But I was gonna say things like this are very much on my mind, so I'm glad you were connecting that, because like that, this is a movie that the more I watch, and I think this is maybe my third or fourth viewing yesterday, I was like, oh, this movie's incredibly relevant. And I wasn't even thinking about that book, but just as our conversations change about family, about parents, and about what is and is not acceptable. So with that being said, let's dive in a little bit to the plot here. The plot is very bare bone. We only have, for the majority of the movie, we only have 4 actors, and the main character here is Eva, played by Lil Ullmann, a frequent collaborator and I think at one time spouse of Ingmar Bergman, who is a woman, let's say, I think maybe late 30s or 40s, who's married to a village pastor. And we begin with one of my favorite scenes, maybe in cinema, if the pastor enters the frame. We have her kind of far off writing the letter, and he unexpectedly starts talking directly at the camera and talking about how much he loves just watching his wife go about her day. And it's very, very sweet, and it always brings tears to my eyes. It's a wonderful,
it's so sweet,
soft movie. It is very art house, and it's like a very soft, sentimental thing that really works for me. Before we get a lot more real savagery. But
that's a good word.
The letter Eva is writing is to her mother, who they have not seen each other in 7 years. Mother's either, I was actually even on recent view unclear if this is new husband or new just long-term male friend has died. And knowing like, okay, you're gonna be devastated. Leonard has passed away. I know you're not doing well. Would you like to come stay with us for as long as you want? And mother is the great Ingrid Bergman, the actress, who is a world-renowned pianist. So she comes out kind of unexpectedly, at least how quickly it goes. And pretty quickly we start to see the seams unravel here as to what this dynamic really is, to why they haven't seen each other in 7 years. And basically the majority of this movie actually is an argument between mother and daughter. And it kind of has a resolution, kind of not, and then the movie ends. But I would just remember being so floored by that this was, it's a short movie, it's 90 minutes, 99, but I think the vast majority of this is an argument between the two of them that happens. They bump into each other in the middle of the night, and then just everything comes pouring out. We'll get into a little bit more specifics, I think, as we typically do, but yeah, that's the synopsis. With that being said, Megan, where would you like to kind of start? Where do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I was pretty struck also by like how play-like it was. I just thought about now, like I think these movies tend to kind of feel that way if it is sort of like a one-night thing, which I think this does kind of happen in like she comes over a period of time, but the main juicy like big argument happens in about, it's like the span of a night.
The unities of like time and place are very much thing here.
So and yeah, it takes place in like the household kind of, they call it a cool word, so like a commissary or so, I don't know. I was
the pastory or something like that.
Yes, you're right.
Because the husband is a pastor, and this is their the house that comes with it. Is it the parsonage? I think it's at it.
Yes,
parsonage,
something like that. I think I didn't quite know what that was, honestly, and was just like, actually, that's a cool household name or something.
I think before we dive into it, I just have to ask you real quick, did you relate to this at all? Like, did you kind of understand this dynamic?
Of the pastor? Or
no, of the mother and daughter.
Oh, absolutely. So I think
Okay.
that's kind of like personally where I do want to I think that's what the movie's like mainly about, obviously.
Right.
You know that more than I, and like I it's pretty immediate. Like it's pretty
Yeah.
clear.
I
And I
asked
did relate.
because okay, good. Because I mean,
Hmm.
yeah, I asked because I remember seeing this film in the class I mentioned, house goods class, and being next to a person from a rather large family. He's like, man,
Yes.
I don't get this at all. And it's like, I
Okay.
wonder
Hmm.
if to some degree I'm Protestant and this, was raised Protestant, even though it's Baptist and this is kind of Lutheran or something. But like I
Uh
am not of Swedish descent, I'm not
right, right.
from the Scandinavia. It's like I wonder if there's other cultural divides here that are bigger than just I had a weird
Mm.
family, but
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because yeah, this person could not relate to it all. So it's like I think that's the most I've understood a family dynamic in the movie,
Sure.
the
Yeah,
most I've
yeah,
related
yeah.
to one.
I know there were so many moments where I think if you do relate to the film, you'll kind of like pretty quickly see yourself in it. I There was
Hmm.
one scene I really like to like call it out where she's her mom's a bit of a talker as well. Like she
Yes.
has a she's a motor mouth, if you will, and I know that in my family, and I know that and actually multiple members of my family, and then
Mm,
me and I'm just not of that way. So I think I
right.
relate more to
Eva.
the daughter's Eva,
Mm,
yeah, Eva's
yeah.
character. And there's a great scene where she's talking to her mom, getting I think it's the night, and she's like getting her ready for her sleep, and then leaves the conversation to go like down the stairs halfway and just kind of like takes a beat. takes she has to like
Yes.
physically stop, take a breath, like put the whole hand on face palm basically.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have had many a conversations where like that exact motif has
Yeah.
happened. So there are a lot of really great like motifs are related to, I
Right.
would say, and just like physicalities of uncomfortableness that I really liked. And they're subtle, and then they do kind of like really build, like you say,
Mm.
it gets dark. It gets
Yeah.
pretty deep.
Let's kind of get into some of that. I mean, one of the first major surprises of this movie is when, well, actually, I think maybe the first. Oh, this is more complicated than we thought. It comes out that Eva and her husband Victor have lost a child who died
Yes.
before turning 4. And we already can do the quick math here. They haven't seen grandma in 7 years. So Ingrid Bergman never had the interest to meet her grandchild. That's
Mm,
already, obviously it's dark. We have a small child who died,
right.
very tragically, but also like that kind of speaks to, there was already quite a rift here. If a person who's always has the excuse of, oh, I was busy recording all of Beethoven's sonatas, or I was busy doing a lecture
Yeah.
series in Los Angeles or Berlin or wherever.
Hmm.
She's also a very, very wealthy woman that keeps coming
Right.
up. Like, could have very easily have not taken every job and could have met her grandchild. So,
That's right. And
very,
she's very much like a star, well,
yes,
in her mind, but
exactly.
also I think in the world too. Like she takes that on, if you will, too.
Right. Which I mean, and that's very interesting to me because obviously, like, I am not so sophisticated that I really keep up with classical musicians. I think I could probably only name Yo-Yo
I
Ma
know.
as a current one,
Hmm.
but and this is obviously in Europe, it's a little more highbrow, etc. But is she really like can't
I
leave the house without being photographed?
Oh,
She's
yeah, yeah,
like, I
yeah.
wouldn't think so, but she does have
Right.
that air about herself, which is, I think, to some degree, you're saying Ingrid Bergman, who at that time was still a complete, legend of film.
Maybe.
Also, the early conversation, Eva tells her mother, who is Charlotte, like, I have to tell you, Helena's here.
Hmm.
And Charlotte, the mother, gets very despondent and is like, you should have told me. I can't believe you didn't tell me this. And they have
Hmm.
this, like, you would have come. And it's unclear who Helena is. She
Right.
asks, is she worse? And
Hmm.
Eva says, of course, it's part of the disease. It comes out that this is Eva's younger sister,
Younger
who
sister.
is, the disease I don't think is ever fully made clear, at least it wasn't
No.
to me. And I kind of like
Hmm.
that. We don't get a
I
clear
know.
understanding of what she is, but there's some muscle problems
Hmm.
there. She's not really able to fully take care of herself. She has difficulties speaking,
Hmm.
and becomes clear this is at least that Helena was put away in a home for quite a while until
Hmm.
Eva and Victor decided to check on her and say, would you like to come live with us? And the answer was a pretty quickly a yes. So
Yes.
so we kind of have this, use old term, invalid the family doesn't want to talk about, at least the mother doesn't want to talk about.
Right.
And I'm trying to think, just all these other, worse and worse things come out. And the fight is often very, very cruel and very logical and very matter of fact, but it's often very childlike. And in the end, Eva is literally blaming her mother for Helena being sick, for not being around enough. And it's a very
Right.
childish logic, but she is, and I think one of the things I love about this movie is the start of the argument, Eva's body language and the whole blocking is very childlike. She's cowering, she's kind of crying still like that little girl. By the end of it, she's not crying, she's not raising her voice, and she is just like this demon in her face on her shoulder, just whispering, "You're horrible," and this is your fault, and this can never be recommended, and you're incapable of love, and is saying the most savage things very calmly.
Oh, framed like a horror movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
it's very
like a slasher.
It is actually. That's a great point.
I agree with you. So I mean, like, yeah, the art. Well, also there were like funny-ish, and funny moments in it, as well as I think that family dynamics are just kind of funny in that way, that it captured really well. And also the argument came about because of like heavy drinking, and so it kind of tinges things, and it kind of like allows it to spin a yarn whatever way it does, I feel like. And that's, it wasn't like, it didn't feel lazy or anything like that, like the way they just kind of it just like snowballed, the snowball effect, if you will.
Yeah,
but it felt very realistic, actually. And I think that the drinking like happened before this big old argument wasn't a problem at all. But yeah, there was just a lot of like audible dams I gave of some of these lines, because she's vicious.
It is kind of
she's
fun
so savage.
In a Shakespeare comedy like Much Ado About Nothing, where they're being very savage to each other. There's that kind of level of enjoyment for me, even though it is, very unexpected. And I think for most viewers, you're not expecting this mother-daughter relationship to be so savage. And this largely hinges on, you would much rather be a celebrity star than be around. You were never there for us. Dad hated it. And we were just these, idiots twiddling our thumbs, hoping you would actually pay attention to us. And there's a lot of, one of my favorite aspects of this movie is there's a lot of memory scenes that play out very dreamlike.
That's right.
Megan, would you mind expanding on that for me?
Yeah, well,
I remember shot, rather.
Yeah, my favorite one was, I think, the very last one, where it's her maybe a past boyfriend, is it, or like her or was it the man who passed away? Yes, Leonardo.
That's the man who passed away.
And he's playing, like, I believe it's a cello is what he plays. So he was a musician as well. And visually, this was really striking to me. It looked crazy. It looked like I think it's meant to be a photograph, like a still photograph.
Anne actually thought it was. I think she might be right. I think it actually, I know what you're talking about, and I was looking really closely. Sorry, you expand it more, but I think you're right.
Well, it was very, very visually striking, because it had to have either been, I mean, it was computerized in some way, but it was only him playing the cello, like his arms moving, and it was a shot of the back of him with still, obviously still people around him. So I literally don't know how they filmed that or edited that. It was pre-CG. It had to have been pre-CGI.
I think it was superimposed. I think because it's like Helena is, you have a man playing for an audience, you have his back, but he's visibly playing. You have one woman who's kind of brightly lit by a candle, and maybe a spotlight. These, I think, are the only two people who are actually being shot this time. And the candle, and I believe everything else was for lack of a better term, kind of superimposed on it, like a matte painting or something. But it's really jarring. It has a painting effect. And this is kind of a really cool, and I just want to back up and say, this is one of the things I really like about this movie. While the story is very simple, it's very stylized without it's not fully showing off. It's still a slow movie, this isn't as fast-paced and as stylized as like a Quentin Tarantino or something, but it's very beautiful. And there's a lot of things like this shot in the way that a normal filmmaker would not think to do, that are economical and gorgeous. And a lot of the memory like scenes are a person narrating and people going through the motions, but they're not talking. There's no dialogue in what you're seeing, and it feels very distant and dreamlike, and it's very surreal.
I think
really
also
made an impression on me.
Yeah, I think it's like composed like photographs. I think every single one of them is kind of composed that way, and either also like very center of frame. So they look visually different than the movie going on, and like it's very clear that it's what's a dream sequence and or what's a memory sequence and what is real life. But yet the framing was awesome. I liked it as well. It was very visually striking, and then I also love the theory of memories as photographs, and that's really beautiful. I liked that a lot. I think it was totally intentional, like, to do that.
Very cool. I think you're absolutely right, and I think another, just like going the extra mile on the basics thing here, is like almost every room in their house, almost every set really has a really strong specific color scheme in a way that's, I think, beyond a pastor's wife would maybe have the means to be this intentional about it, but it's really cool. And of course you have, it's Autumn Sonata, so you have these fall colors for a lot of it, but like there is a real strong colors that are really reflecting the mood in a real way in every shot. That I really like seeing the attention to detail like that, like what's in the frame, the mise en scène. Let's tell the story with every single thing we can, but
and some of the childhood motifs, well, she's also in a very grandiose mansion house, like in that scene, so you can see
the flashbacks.
You can see the contrast, and like, and they just frame the mother so well. It's like she's always kind of away from her as well, just physically, and and the childlike aspect is really well done here. I like joked to myself that this is a psychologist's dream movie. Like, I think they just, I think it had to have, to have been from a mind of us. Like my sister's a psych major. She's going for her PhD, and our favorite like a pastime in any game or any movie that we watch together is like psychoanalyze these people. I think I mentioned that before.
Which is what you're supposed to do for a Bergman movie.
And so I felt like it was literally pulled from a psychologist's mind. Like, it had to have been. I think it was every choice nearly was psychological.
And I think that's a great point too, because this music has always been an important thing for Bergman movies, and there's really, I think, the one song here, the Chopin, and Bergman has said, I think on a few occasions, that in his mind, film was closest to music than any other art form, because both of these permeate your subconscious immediately. They go to something deeper before you understand it on a cognitive level, that it's affecting you, before you fully understand the context of everything. And obviously all art is subjective, and I know some people experience a comic book that way or whatever, but I think he's right, broadly speaking, and that certainly is the effect that this film has on me. And
I love that. I hadn't heard that before.
Right. And he was a thinker.
How'd you like that Chopin scene?
Oh my god, I love that. That was so grueling. Let's describe it. So and this is kind of the daughter, to some degree, I think, setting herself up to fail, because she knows she's not a professional musician. Her mother is. And it's been mentioned a couple of times, I think, by her and even by Victor, like, oh, Eva wants to play for you, Charlotte. And then she does. And Charlotte gives a reasonable compliment. She's clearly a little bit irked watching somebody not play this piece as well, which I forgot this too. But it's also like a famously, at least if I'm understanding this correctly, a very complicated piece that is Eva, or as Charlotte explains later, it's supposed to sound ugly. So,
or it sounds very solemn as well.
It sounds very solemn, and it's to me, not a pianist, complicated. And so Eva plays it and is not satisfied with the compliment from Charlotte, and says, well, I don't want you to just placate me. I want you to tell me your secret. How do you do this? And then Charlotte pretty quickly starts to answer. And what I mean is, she doesn't need to be convinced all that much to go straight into I am a concert pianist lecturing real quick mode, which is what Eva asked for, but also this kind of immediate regret of, you just think I'm stupid. And, and clearly I can't do this, and all these comments seem like little daggers twisting, and I think this is one of the things I really like about the movies. There's a lot of moments where Eva does seem childish. I think even though overall I agree with her, there are times where she just slips into a I'm going to impress my mom with something. Damn, that didn't work.
Yeah.
You know, and I asked my mom for advice and she gave it to me, and fuck, that's not what I wanted to hear. And I think that makes it a lot more relatable and understandable. And there's even like she's talking about immediately having regret after she arrives. I can't believe if I invited her here. And
I agree. I think that like it in a way that's pretty realistic, honestly. Like I think it's like approval seeking always puts you in kind of a childish position and or just like a power dynamic position. So that especially with a it's so good because they got on the dynamic of like approving from a family member that you really just crave. I think just like again, psych major sister is like you we are naturally craving that. So she, this is a universal. There are some things that are thematic, but approval from a loved one is universal need, I guess, in humans. So that's a very like humanistic moment in the film. But that one was an interesting scene for me too, because I feel the mother did like get emotional hearing her daughter play. So she was very moved by it. But then I think for me it was funny. It was like comedic that she then immediately goes into correcting mode, and and Eva's like, well, like what was I kind of expecting almost. And so and it does play very like realistically somehow. It's very funny.
I agree with you. I think there's a lot of humor in this movie in that way that's very, very relatable. And there's even just like a Charlotte just says, "Oh, I bet the shower doesn't work here," with her head right into the shower. Then it's like, yeah, it does actually. That's a straight up slapstick moment. And I think there's enough in here to make this a very enjoyable movie. One of the darker things that occurred to Anne and I while we were watching this movie is a strange kind of thing that is Charlotte really doesn't want to hear about, is that Eva kind of still feels the presence of her son, not in a full-on ghost way, but I remember talking about like feelings like she can still feel that Eric, the deceased, is still there, can still feel his breath sometimes, can still just feel like he's walking with her. And she seems kind of at peace with that. And who am I to take that away from somebody who kind of feels that connection after such a loss? But Charlotte is very kind of disturbed by this and wants to change the subject. But as Anne pointed out, Eva kind of has this strange satisfaction of not becoming her mother, right? Because she did not, Eric did not live long enough to have that resentment, to have that kind of hostility, and for her as a mother to do the same things to create a similar dynamic that Charlotte did. So,
oh my God,
you know what I mean?
Very
Which is, so she has this, obviously she's lost her son, but she has this relationship that's not complicated by her own failings emotionally. And that's a very odd place that she is, because she does kind of at the beginning of the movie seem to be in this, maybe not exactly fully cheerful, but a pretty satisfied place. And there's even Victor says like, I know your daughter didn't love me when we married, to her mother, which is an odd thing to say, but it's not, but they also weren't unhappy. It wasn't a miserable I tricked her into marrying me thing. So
and he's very pleasant. He's not like,
he is pleasant.
He's not a problem in Eva's life. It's pretty clear that like her mother dynamics are the problem, and which is kind of, I think nowadays you could easily throw away to like, we don't like the other my son-in-law or whatever. Like I think that's just so easily done, and like a little more accepted if it's not your blood, a family. That's a little archaic, and I know families are so blended nowadays, and it like doesn't matter, but I think there's still like that element if you come from a family like that. So I think that's part of it too.
Well, I think you mentioned that when we have these flashbacks to Eva's upbringing, it is a gorgeous mansion. It is an old world Europe, tall doors, massive mahogany bookshelves house. And she did, and it's mentioned early on, kind of run away to the countryside, kind of wanted to get out of those circles and move somewhere she didn't really know anybody, and had a successful career as a journalist, but was pretty happy to live in the country, and not be a part of that very rich upbringing. And of course, Charlotte's a little confused by that.
Yeah.
So, and it's not that they are doing poorly, they're just not having the same massive income,
Well, yes.
the luxury. But I think another major plot point we should maybe alert to is, while Eva blames Charlotte for Helena being sick, which is childish, she did put Helena in a home and leave her there, and also hasn't seen her for at least those 7 years, maybe more. So it's very much shutting the problem child away.
Yes. I think that was something that struck me too, is like, I think if you are if your family or if you can just relate to like the tendency to be avoidant, I guess this is like the movie that will get you, because it's it's not physical abuse going on here, but it's a lot of just I mean, straight up abandonment issues. So like if that emotionality gets to you, like that's kind of that's the bread and butter of like what's going on in their relationship. And I think it's kind of, not to say easier, but like you can more easily show the harshness of a outwardly abusive relationship, outwardly like physically abusive relationship, a little more easily than it is to do these subtleties of the song and dance that you do with your family that is avoidant or something like that,
Yeah.
And this movie does it and like attempts it. So I think it's a big feat that they're kind of doing here.
I really agree. I think there's even a lot of modern movies and TV shows that are not particularly well written that will have some kind of confrontation of why aren't you kind of my ball games, dad, type of thing, that feel very, very cheesy. And it's very easy to write this off as like, oh, fact, this adult is just whining. And this movie doesn't feel that way at all, even though there are those previously mentioned moments where Eva is being overtly childish, and Helena is kind of, with her disease, kind of resembles a toddler, is kind of throwing these fits and is unable to speak. So even though that's definitely emulated consciously, it does not feel childish. It does not feel like the movie doesn't take these concerns seriously. And I really like that. I think this movie really respects children who have survived various forms of trauma, and who have complicated feelings as an adult. And it felt, I think that's maybe one of the reasons I really latched onto it when I first saw it. I was like, oh, I don't think I'd felt this validated by something before. And
it's pretty like tonally accurate, I would say.
And I think that really, to me, the devastating thing at the end of this movie is they've had this horrible fight. They've had it all out. There's nothing left, no stone unturned or left unthrown. Everything has been said. And then Charlotte leaves the next morning, and Eva is hurt and surprised that she left, and writes a letter kind of trying to make a go at it again. And this reminded me, and like in my family, I've had these, not quite to this level, I've had these very intense conversations with my parents trying to work things out, and then it didn't really it was almost like it didn't happen. Like there was no progress. We're back to these dynamics where we don't see each other for a while. And I think this movie really leaves me with this end point of, maybe it's gonna be another 7 years, maybe less, maybe more, but they're probably gonna have this again. This is probably gonna happen, and it's gonna be another long time, and it's just going to be exhausting. And that's just the cycle. And that theory I fully recognize as my own life bringing into it. So if you as a viewer didn't get that, you Megan or you listener, I'm willing to be wrong about that.
I'll be honest, it's not very optimistic. It's not a happy ending, if you will. And I think that but that's to the extent that the movie is very realistic. That I agree that it felt very just accurate to me of who these characters are. And so I like I want to caution people, if you're struggling a little bit with family dynamics, you're not gonna escape to a fantasy world, if you will, in this film. It's gonna kind of bring it to the surface. But I think we've talked about it, but it's just like, that's sort of a testament to the tone of the movie. I think it's so strong, and I think that it's like just hitting something that is really hard to hit and get right, and just get like accurate, but I think it pretty much does.
I agree. Well, I think we've said most of what needs to be said about this movie. Do you have any closing thoughts? Because I think we should move on to some lighter subject for our listeners.
Yes, that was our assignment.
Yes.
I'm excited to talk to you about the wreck.
Rex.
No, I'm thank you for bringing it to me, Seth. And yeah, it was a good one. You know, I think that if what we have talked about so far is like striking a chord with you, I would say give it a watch. Like, I think that you'll be pleasantly surprised, not in its optimism, but in its accuracy and like in your addressing, I guess, of these feelings maybe that you've been having in your own families, you know?
I think one last thing. I fully agree with you, Megan. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I think there's definitely like going back to the parodies of foreign films, whether it's like a Simpsons joke or something. And this director is one of those guys. I think there's this misnotion that like, oh, these movies try to say something profound, but it's really dumb. I think this movie has a lot of just standalone sentences that really strike me as profound. This movie is a deeper, more true art. It is the difference between reading, Dostoevsky or reading Tom Clancy. Not to knock Tom Clancy. So this is a tougher thing to get into. This is a more strenuous movie, but it's very similarly rewarding. So highly recommend you check it out. It's currently on the Criterion Channel app and HBO Max, or as always, folks, get it from your library. So that is the sad family movie. That's the, if you don't want to watch Hereditary, exactly. Here's the family movie. But we're going to move on to, as I was rewatching, I texted Megan, it's like, maybe we should recommend a happy family movie at the end of this episode. So that's what we're going to do. Megan, you want to start us off?
Yes, sure. So I was trying to think if I had said this one before yet, but I have not. I don't think I believe I have not. It's starting to get a little blurry up in here, folks. So especially with our regs too.
Yeah.
Because I'm running out of the pool. But but this is a distinct family movie that kind of got me thinking, and it's very much a comedy. More so, but it's a very, very dark comedy, but leans more heavily into comedy for me. And that is Little Miss Sunshine, which I had watched. I had watched this with my first getting into film, like in high school. We actually had like a film appreciation class. And this was, I believe we watched this in that one. I was like, 15, whatever, but it was the first film that like was parodying family in a way that felt funny, accurate. I keep using that word, but like I think it's hard to get. I think it's hard to get accuracy sometimes with families and not have it be over the top and like just throwing like shit in there to make it crazy or something like that, or like it's pretty easy to go over the top almost with family movies, but this one felt pretty like pitch perfect. It is bleak as well, like they're talking about bleak topics, and for anybody that doesn't know, like a synopsis of it is that oh my god, I'm like gonna blank on the girl, but it's oh man,
Abigail Breslin.
It's Abigail Breslin. Yes, this is so. She's very young. This may be literally like her first film role. Yeah. I think it is. She's very young, and she's the daughter of this family. Oh my god, Toni Collette is in it as well. So it's
I haven't seen this movie in a long time. I completely forgot she was in that.
She's great. And the plot is that they're taking their daughter to a like Miss USA for babies pageant in across the country or something. They have to go on a long car trip. Toni Collette's character, her brother, has come into the family as well. He's staying with them, having like almost committed suicide. He's played by Steve Carell, so this was like one of his I think his first serious role, like other than The Office.
I would think so. Yeah, he's very good in this.
And very serious role, like but he it's Steve Carell, so he'll bring comedy in it as well. But it's a bit of an adventure movie, like almost, as they go across the country as this dysfunctional family, if you will. It's a dysfunctional family movie, and I was struck by how they all interacted, but it has a very like sweet undertone as
Mm.
well, that, always gets to me. So if you're looking for a little bit of a more like silver lining family movie, then maybe this one. I think you'll find it in this one. It made me think of it just because of its dysfunctional aspect, but again, it felt very true to who these
Yeah.
characters are, and that's always wins in family movies. You just have to be true to the characters, I would say.
Yeah. I think that's a great movie. I haven't seen that in a long time.
Hmm.
Just looking it up here, going through the cast list, like, oh yeah, young Paul Dano's in that, Greg Kinnear's in that, and like um people who were you associate with a lot of different roles were
Yes.
in that movie. Uh I think something that that movie really nails too is economics, which most indie movies
Yeah.
do more than a
Hmm.
Hollywood movie. Because if I remember right, the inciting incident here is the girl gets into a pageant that they didn't expect her to, kind of. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
shit, how are we going to afford to get all of us over there? We can't buy
that's
this many
right.
plane tickets, so we're driving the big van plus.
Hmm.
And that just
Yes,
felt like
yes,
such a real world practical conversation of course we got to do this because she got in, but how are we going to pay for it? And
yes. Hmm.
yeah, very fun movie. Great pick, Megan.
Hmm.
I am going with a different dysfunctional but fun family movie, an animated movie actually, the Mitchells versus the Machines.
Oh my God, I was thinking about this movie. I
Oh
haven't
yeah.
seen it yet, but I've
Oh, you would
heard
like it, I
I've
think.
heard
Yeah.
its praises. Hmm.
Yeah, so this is also a dysfunctional family road trip movie. A fun cast. We have Maya Rudolph and Danny McBride are in here, and Eric
Hmm.
Andre, Olivia Colman, and a lot of other fun people. Doug the Pug is a model in this, the internet
Wow.
ugly dog thing. But yeah, this is also a dysfunctional family movie that is basically daughter got accepted to film school in I think UCLA, and dad is an outdoorsman, doesn't doesn't really understand this, doesn't really
Mm.
he just wants to build his wood crafts. And there's a lot of daughter wants to show dad the new short film she made starring their dog. He wants to show her a bird feeder or whatever he made. And
Yeah.
neither of them are connecting. They're not having any interest for the overlap at
Uh-huh.
all. And they do a road trip. And there's, even though there's a lot of arguments, it is still very much like, well, we still have to be in the car together. We're still going to eat dinner and be
Yes.
nice to each other after bickering in a way that I felt was pretty healthy.
Hmm.
And it's just a crazy, funny movie where basically they somehow end up like a machine apocalypse. All the iPhones or whatever it is rise up and they have to outgun them. And of course, they are not the suave, rich family. None of them have really any practical skills except maybe
Hmm.
dad. And they're in this wasteland now, but also are still trying to get her to college despite all this.
Right.
So I think it's also a movie that understands memes and like internet humor more than any other movie
Okay.
I've seen, because and they reflect that pretty appropriately with the daughter and the kids. I
Hmm.
feel like that's a thing a lot of movies, whenever they try to have kids interacting on their
Oh,
phones or whatever, it just doesn't make sense, or
yes.
it's just not how that works at all. This movie seems to grasp that, and it's made by younger people. And uh, I think it actually came out in time for Thanksgiving like 2 years ago and was a pretty delightful
Hmm.
watch. So I highly recommend that if you want just a fun family, there is going to be a catharsis. There's going to be a good
Oh,
uh, healing at the end of it movie.
that's so fun. I heard about it from other like critical praise actually. So
Mm.
that's really nice to hear. That'll be
Yeah,
so
it was
fun.
very good. And the
Hmm.
animation's great. So,
Nice.
all right.
Nice.
Well,
Mhm.
folks, that's our Thanksgiving family episode. Be on the lookout for the food episode will be coming out next. And
Mhm.
write in your guess. There's a few major contenders what the food movie could be. We're not going
Yes,
to spoil
true.
it, but I'm curious if anybody guesses it. Hopefully, you are going to go home to something more pleasant than this Bergman film for dinner. So enjoy the
And if you
holidays.
don't, you have a film to relate to,
Exactly. Yeah.
at least.
Yes.
And we understand you.
Yes.
But yes, happy holidays, everybody. And enjoy the food aspect the most. That's always
Yes.
the most important part,
You
almost.
can't beat it.
You can't. Hmm.
All right. Take care, all.